Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2021 Enactus final round of competition. My name is Amy Kenyon, Vice President of Partnerships with Enactus Canada, and I'll be moderating the final round today. Our judges have been trained and our final four teams are ready to go. So let's get started. First up, please join me in welcoming the team from Okanagan College. Judges, please open their report from the link in your email, which we also just shared in the chat, and scroll to their green sheet in your judge handbook. You now have 3 minutes to review their written report. Judges, please turn your attention to the screens as we play the video presentation.
Welcome to the Okanagan. Pristine landscapes, orchards as far as the eye can see, beautiful homes, and luxurious living. But behind all of this beauty lies a different picture.
That luxurious lifestyle? Well, it's driven by some of the highest debt levels in Canada.
Those beautiful homes? That only tells part of the story. There are an estimated 400 people experiencing chronic homelessness in Kelowna right now, with this number increasing each year.
But that's not all. Remember those beautiful orchards? In BC, 25% of all food ends up in the garbage, and in our local community, the grounds of many orchards are covered by unwanted apples that are left to spoil or rot.
We transformed these issues into opportunities and developed 3 projects. $1.2 million children in Canada struggle to get enough to eat every day. At the same time, every year in Canada alone, around 500 million apples go to waste. What if we could transform this waste and turn it into a healthy snack to address food insecurity? That's why we created Fruit Snaps. Fruit Snaps works with local farmers to rescue these unwanted apples and turn them into a healthy snack to combat food insecurity. With the help of the Gleaners, a local nonprofit, we developed an innovative process to dehydrate these apples and turn them into apple chips.
In our pilot year, we tested our business model by donating fruit snaps to over 300 children at local schools. But that was just the beginning.
In our second year, we expanded Fruit Snaps to meet a greater demand from our community. We developed an innovative new process to increase our production capacity by over 500%. Our Fruit Snaps were supplied to 18 local schools in Canada and other countries, such as Ukraine and North Korea.
Last spring, all of our schools closed abruptly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, leaving us with excess capacity. So what did we do? We pivoted our strategy and expanded our project to supply local food banks and help those who needed it most.
This fall, we picked twice as many apples as last year. But we didn't stop there. We identified an opportunity for this current year to transition Fruit Snaps into a social enterprise through the introduction of fresh pressed apple juice. So life gave us apples and we made apple juice.
This innovation during the worst of COVID-19 represents the best of Enactus OC. We capitalized on an opportunity to scale our impact and take it to the next level. To date, we have produced 2,000 liters of juice from the apples that would have otherwise gone to waste. The juice was sold through several sales channels, including an online store, a local grocer, and a partnership with a local elementary school.
The juice was such a success that this March, just 4 months after launch, we sold all of our inventory. This generated $5,500 in revenue with a gross profit margin of 57%.
Our partnership with BC Tree Fruits provided us with an additional 6,000 pounds of apples. These apples contributed to a total donation of over 41,000 servings to local schools, food banks, and international organizations. This increase of 17% from last year was achieved all while meeting recommended public health guidelines.
Our vision is getting noticed. This February, we received $10,000 from the Investment Readiness Program funded by the Government of Canada. These funds will enable us to expand our social enterprise, which helps us to achieve a long-term vision for our program. This revenue model will allow us to pay farmers for their apples and hire at-risk youth for our labor needs.
Because of fruit snaps, farmers now have access to a sustainable means to repurpose their apple waste, and local school children have access to a nutritious snack.
You like oranges?
But we didn't stop with fruit snaps. The #1 social issue in Kelowna is homelessness. What if we could transform the stigma around people experiencing homelessness into a positive conversation? We acted on this opportunity and created Rising.
Rising is an interactive educational resource that was developed as a response to local educators asking for our assistance to help them incorporate the topic of homelessness into their classrooms. Funded through a national grant from Canadian Tire, the project uses a train-the-trainer approach and was a collaboration between the nonprofit Journey Home, our local school district, and our lived experience mentors. Dorothy, one of these lived experience mentors, worked with us to develop Rising.
The value of the module and the way it's delivered in teaching, it comes from the people who lived it, because nothing should be done about them without them. Children should be given the opportunity to have their own opinion and not be raised in the biases of their parents or society. A drop in the pond is a ripple, and every child will be talking to how many people in his lifetime. I think that's why it's important.
Rising incorporates interactive activities and is customizable for elementary, middle, and high school students. The desired outcomes include awareness and prevention of youth homelessness, fostering empathy, and developing new perspectives. For example, one student, Tristan, connected homelessness with Pink Shirt Day and how a person experiencing homelessness is bullied and ignored because of how they look.
Our vision is that by working with teachers and students through Rising, we can encourage social responsibility and compassion in our community. Students are encouraged to brainstorm ways to turn their ideas into action. By the end of May, our module will have run in 7 local classrooms, ranging from grades 3 to 12. In just 4 months, we project Rising will have directly impacted 176 students.
We will be expanding Rising this coming year through the development of new modules, each one connected to a nonprofit organization to build awareness of other prevalent issues, such as Indigenous history, cyberbullying, and sustainable fashion. As for the homelessness module, current plans are underway to scale it into a social enterprise by making our curriculum packages available for purchase through online educator websites. We will be giving a percentage of the income earned back into the nonprofit organizations that have helped us grow.
Through Rising, we will educate today's youth and empower them to create meaningful change in their communities.
Empowerment through education is how another Enactus OC project, Can Save, transforms the conversation on a national issue. Canadians are living with serious debt. Students are reaching adulthood without the financial skills needed to succeed. Can Save is a program that teaches financial literacy to youth using a simulated economy. Students must complete in-class and take-home assignments on topics like spending habits. This earns them Enactus bucks.
Throughout the program, students are tempted to make poor financial decisions, like buying candy and toys. Student success is measured based on the completion of their workbooks and their final account balances.
CanSave started for youth in kindergarten up to grade 4, and we have been working to continuously expand the program. Last year, we added a brand new module called CanSave for unique learners. This module was developed in part by one of our Enactus members, Danielle, whose son Logan has a learning disability. Almost 5% of Canadian children aged 6 to 15 have a learning disability, such as autism or ADHD. Danielle's passion and knowledge helped to expand CanSave using special education techniques to include these children with learning disabilities.
But that's not all. New this year, as a response to the increasing financial instability that was a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we expanded the CanSave modules to provide financial literacy training to youth in grade 5 and 6. This allows us to potentially impact an additional 8 million students across Canada.
All of the CanSave modules are available in both French and English. In addition, all of the CanSave materials have been vetted by certified teachers. Since all CanSave resources are available for free to students in both virtual and in-person settings, parents and teachers across Canada have continued to access CanSave during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The success of CanSave has been overwhelming. This year, our online platform has empowered over 620 teachers and parents, impacting over 23,000 students across Canada.
To address copious amounts of food waste, we developed an innovative way to repurpose wasted apples and scale this impact through the introduction of a new social enterprise that provides local farmers with a way to repurpose their wasted fruit and provided over 3,000 people with new and improved access to healthy food.
Not all of Dorothy's experiences have been positive. Her lived experience around homelessness has been given the platform to change the way people think about homelessness.
Danielle's son and over 23,000 other children across Canada now have access to improved education that is accessible remotely and will help them improve their futures.
This year, through these 3 projects alone, Enactus OC has impacted over 27,000 people. We diverted 22,000 pounds of waste, saved over 4.6 million liters of water, and helped over 23,000 students gain access to better education.
Local farmers, Dorothy and Logan, represent just a few of the many people impacted by big problems facing Canadians.
At Enactus OC, we're transforming lives and communities.
It is now time for the question and answer period. Judges, please submit your questions through the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Click on chat and use the drop-down to ensure you send your questions directly to me, moderator Amy Kenyon. And while we wait for your questions to come in, students, please state your school name so we can ensure your audio is working properly. Danielle, I think you're first on my list.
Okanagan College.
Great. Karsten?
Okanagan College.
Sorry, I can't actually see your names. Just go one at a time.
Okanagan College.
Thank you.
Okanagan College.
Great.
Okanagan College.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with the questions. The first question comes from James. How does your team think about scaling these ideas into something that can actually be implemented at a national level across Canada?
Well, as far as CanSave goes, we actually have already implemented at a national level. In Canada, there's a significant demand and need for resources that teach financial literacy. CanSave is currently available in every Canadian province and territory in both English and French, and we've moved our resources online so that every teacher and parent can access them. This means that we have a very broad reach. This year, we are faced with a disruption due to COVID-19, and as a result, we designed our newest module by pairing all of the lesson plans with activities and instructional videos that teachers can play for their students to help reinforce the content. The videos were such a huge success that as a result, they're going to be a key component of our grade 7 and 8 module, which we're currently working on. And this adaptation has allowed us to continue to scale our project. CanSave's reached over 23,000 students this year, and we're projecting to impact 30,000 students next year.
Incredible.
In regards to fruit snaps for expanding across the nation, we have a partnership with Gleaners that allows us to produce and dehydrate the fruit snaps. And the Gleaners have, I think it's 5 locations in Ontario and about 8 nationally that we can partner with and use other schools to move this project across the nation and have production facilities on the East Coast. And in order to help cover the cost of that, we're working to use the revenue from our apple juice to help us hire at-risk youth and to expand our project by getting more apples and paying farmers for them and covering the cost of expanding this project into more regions.
Great. Next question comes from Dan. How do you link all the many different initiatives? Would it not be better to focus on one cause?
At Enactus OC, we have a relatively large team. We have at times 60 students working with us. This year we had 25. We also have 9 faculty advisors. So we can distribute our students. Some of our projects require a small group of students, sometimes 1, 2, or 3. Other ones can use the whole team at times. So we are allowed to shift resources, and we've been able to do that very successfully for the past 16 years that we've been around.
Great. 2 questions from James and Todd, very similar. Do you view yourselves as building a non-profit or a really socially driven enterprise that can build scalable businesses and run independently of donations and government funding?
Absolutely. Our project Fruit Snap is just entering into the social enterprise. We ran our pilot with our apple juice this last year, and we've received a grant for $10,000 from the IRP to help us kickstart this social enterprise. Using these funds to get the project going and working with a marketing company out of Kelowna, we're going to develop our brand and run a marketing campaign and get our juice into mainstream retailers. Our goal is to hit $20,000 in revenue, which we are on track to do. With $20,000 in revenue, we can pay at-risk teams to help us pick our apples. We can pay the farmers for the apples that we juice when they usually have to pay to dispose of them. And we can still make 120,000 servings of Fruit Snap while operating at a 13% profit margin. This project is sustainable, and we build that into all of our projects.oc to make sure that they can continue to run on their own.
Great. Next question from Bruce. He says, you didn't mention anything about the Ivy Collective in your presentation.
So Ivy Collective is one of our brand new projects that was developed when we had to shut down some of our other projects due to COVID. Totally COVID friendly. The only thing is we just haven't scaled it quite yet. We are still in the process. We did have a very successful first year, and we'll be expanding it further next year with many more topics to present on. And we're also introducing it into career classes through the school district.
Great. Next question from Jamie. He says, did I understand you correctly in that you exported the apple snacks to North Korea? Can you tell us more about this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the benefits of working directly alongside with the Gleaner Society is that we can piggyback on their distribution system to these areas in high distress. They ship meals all over the world to areas that they have vetted and to partners in these areas to help get people meals that really need them. And a lot of times, these cargo containers that they're shipping internationally aren't filled up all the way, and we will send excess Fruit Snaps along with them. So in the past, we've sent Fruit Snaps to North Korea, Guatemala, Armenia, Ukraine, and to an Aboriginal community in Nunavut.
Great. Peter asks, what was your largest challenge and how did you overcome it?
Our largest challenge this year was, I think, the same challenge that a lot of teams across Canada experienced, and that was just student engagement with the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of students felt isolated. They were missing that social interaction that we got every day at school. However, Enactus OC took that as an opportunity, and we used Enactus as an outlet for students who were feeling isolated or who felt that they weren't making an impact in their community to get involved and contribute meaningful to their community.
Great. Niall asks, did the Fruit Snaps project provide employment opportunities to Gleaners? If so, can you quantify?
The Gleaners is a charity organization that uses volunteerism to help achieve their goals. Many of the people that volunteer at the Gleaners are retired, and they usually show up early in the morning to help us process. But we also bring our own volunteers into the Gleaners and try to still stay socially distant and wear a mask and meet the guidelines while producing the Fruit Snaps.
Great. Next question from Susan. How do you measure the long-term impact of financial literacy to know it's having a real impact, not just the number of people reached?
With all of our CanSave modules, we use both pre and post surveys to measure learning. So like any language, financial literacy is best established at a young age. And studies have demonstrated that children who are taught the basics of concepts like budgeting and saving at a young age, they're better prepared to make good financial decisions later in life. We have many different modules addressing student learning outcomes from kindergarten all the way up to grade 6, making it possible for us to reinforce and further student learning year after year. Right now, we're actually designing a module for grades 7 and 8 so that we're going to be able to provide an even more learning opportunities and continue to scale our impact.
Great. Next question from Ian. What are the costs involved in the CanSave program and how do you make it self-sustaining?
So as far as the CanSave program goes, we have secured a large amount of funding through both partnerships and grants. We've generated over $100,000 in program funding, and it ensures the long-term continuation of our program. We believe that financial literacy is a fundamental life skill that all children should have access to. So we don't actually charge for this program because we don't want to create any barriers that might prevent
Your
access.
time has expired. Please join me in congratulating the Enactus team from Okanagan College. Judges, we have a couple of minutes as we bring in the next team. Please use this time to complete your green sheet and we'll get started momentarily. Students, you may now leave the meeting. The judges have asked their questions, but for those of you watching on the live stream, if you have questions for Okanagan College, please submit them using the QR code or link on the screen and we'll ask the most popular questions at our ceremony later this afternoon. Now, please join me in welcoming the team from Wilfrid Laurier University. Judges, please open their report from the link in your email, which we also just shared in the chat, and scroll to their green sheet in your judge handbook. You now have 3 minutes to review their written report. Judges, please turn your attention to the screens as we play the video presentation.
It may not seem like it, given the damage it has caused, but plastic hasn't been around forever. In the course of human history, the timeline on plastic is actually pretty short. We didn't even call the seemingly indispensable innovation plastic until 1925. It crept up on us until the 50s, when global plastic production took off, and the idea of single-use plastics was born. Fast forward over the last 70 years, we now create over 300 million tons of plastic waste every year, which is nearly equivalent to the weight of the world's population. And plastic production is expected to double in the next 20 years. The timeline is escalating at an alarming rate. Our love affair with plastic has led it to being pretty much part of every product we use. It is everywhere. The problem is, it's also everywhere it's not supposed to be.
We've been taught to believe that the answer lies in the 3 R's. In fact, the first Blue Box program in the world started in our own town of Kitchener, Ontario 30 years ago. But it isn't enough. Only 9% of our plastic is actually recycled, 12% is incinerated, and 79% remains in landfills or in our environment. The main culprit is plastic packaging, which represents 40% of global plastic production. It's used once and then discarded. And even if recycling worked, over 88% of global production is still virgin plastic because it's higher quality and cheaper than recycled materials.
To move forward and build a more sustainable world, we need to rewind the timeline on plastic. We need to create innovations that upcycle our existing plastic waste, and most importantly, create alternatives that prevent the production of plastics altogether. That is exactly what we're doing at Enactus Laurier through 2 of our enterprises, Last 20 and Earthsuds.
The average plastic bag has a useful life of 12 minutes, but at the end of that life, it stays around for another 500 to 1,000 years, and we use 5 trillion plastic bags globally every year. These bags are made of a thin plastic film called low-density polyethylene, or LDPE. It gets tangled in the machinery, so is difficult to recycle, and is not even accepted in many recycling programs. Instead, it sits in our landfills where it emits more methane and ethylene than any other plastic.
At Last 20, we're upcycling this plastic waste into sustainable pavement. Traditional pavement is 90% aggregate held together with 10% bitumen, a low-grade crude oil. We're supplementing 30% of the bitumen with LDPE. In fact, for every kilometer of road, we'll be upcycling almost 2 million plastic bags. Plastic increases the overall durability and longevity of the pavement. Using plastic waste also makes asphalt more porous, so it absorbs sound vibrations, lowering noise pollution. And our solution is just as cost-effective as traditional pavement.
This year, we've raised $23,000 in funding for R&D. This has allowed us to complete multiple rounds of testing with CTA labs to determine the optimal mix of plastic to asphalt for maximum strength and stability.
Our first pilot will take place this summer at the Brantford site of Avita's. We'll be paving their loading dock area, which is roughly 2,100 square meters or about the size of a soccer field. This will be the first plastic pavement project in Ontario and the second in all of Canada. And we're also really proud to have created 5 green internships for youth in the process.
Although our early adopters are projected to be private contractors, the public market for Canadian road and highway construction is around $13 billion. And we've seen early interest. At the Ontario Road Builders Association conference, the municipalities of Thunder Bay and Niagara expressed a desire to partner with us.
We're also spreading our mission globally by leading conversations with businesses and experts on our podcast, Sustainable Sessions. With over 1,000 listeners in 27 different countries, we're creating a global eco-community to advocate for systemic change.
Last 20 is creating a sustainable home for LDPE, but this only helps us rewind the timeline by cleaning up our current plastic waste. With 360 million tons of new plastic produced annually worldwide, what we also need to do is stop the production of plastic altogether.
It is estimated that over 23.7 billion shampoo, conditioner, and body wash bottles are used in North America and Europe alone every year. These bottles are extremely difficult to sort, clean, and recycle properly because of leftover product, so they just end up in our landfills. This is the dirty side of soap. Imagine a world without plastic toiletry bottles. Without producing these bottles every year, we could instead provide clean drinking water to over 631 million people, power close to 2.7 million homes, and prevent CO2 emissions equivalent to taking over 716,000 cars off the road.
This is why we created EarthSuds, solid single-use tablets of shampoo, conditioner, and body wash. When you crush, add water, and lather, they work exactly like typical liquid products. They're packaged in recyclable paperboard or reusable shower cases, which eliminate the need for plastic altogether. It's shampoo without the bottle. Traditional products are over 85% water. Since our tablets are solid form, they don't waste water and the resulting product is 4 times lighter, allowing us to transport more in fewer trips, reducing our carbon footprint by 75%. In fact, the environmental impact of our innovation was recognized this past September, when we were named the best Enactus project in the world for solving our ocean's plastics crisis.
Until recently, we were producing by hand with an annual production capacity of 80,000 tablets. We sold out our entire capacity this year, generating over $66,000 in revenue and eliminating the need for over 10,000 plastic bottles. This includes our donation of just under $3,000 worth of product to youth shelters in our 1-for-1 holiday campaign. But our demand was increasing at a rate beyond our one-room production facility, creating a backlog of $52,000 in orders and a lost opportunity to debut our product in a national grocery chain on Earth Day.
It was clearly time to shift our focus to scaling production. After reaching out to more than 100 contract manufacturers, we signed with a facility in New York, increasing our capacity to over 4 million tablets a year, while maintaining a 32.5% gross margin. We've spent the last 12 months resourcing our ingredients to ensure the sustainability of our supply chain, reformulating our product, and conducting rigorous quality testing that has resulted in a superior product ready for national and international distribution. We also updated our logo and packaging and are currently in the process of completing our first production run of 150,000 tablets, eliminating the need for an additional 13,900 plastic bottles.
Since we started selling our tablets in October 2019, they have been stocked by 76 small to medium retailers. But our increased capacity has opened the door to expand our distribution channels. We now have commitments with 2 of the largest national grocery chains in Canada, Loblaws and Sobeys. We expect to pilot our tablets in a Loblaw store in Ontario this summer and expand provincially over the next year. With Sobeys, our revenue potential climbs even higher. On a provincial level, we expect to be in 100 Sobeys, Freshco, and Foodland stores that will generate an estimated revenue of $80,000 in the next 5 months. Based on our success at the provincial level and Sobeys' average uptake rate, we project to be carried in 376 additional stores across Canada, resulting in a combined revenue of over $980,000 within the next 12 months. And with camping season around the corner, we saw an opportunity to introduce our suds to an entirely new market, and have begun conversations with Canadian Tire store owners.
With the world shifting online this year, we also focused on growing our e-commerce revenue. Over the last 12 months, the Earthsud story reached over 2.6 million people globally through our various social platforms, helping us to expand from 2 to 16 countries, achieving a 335% increase in e-commerce sales overall. We also signed with an international distribution and logistics company, giving us the ability to scale not just online, but through retailers worldwide.
In response to consumer feedback, we developed a curly hair shampoo and conditioner this year. We are also exploring new product lines. After discovering that over 20 billion non-recyclable toothpaste tubes are produced globally every year, we created Smile Tabs, single-use, plastic-free toothpaste capsules. Our solution has a similar user experience to regular toothpaste, unlike any other zero-waste alternative on the market. Consumers will simply twist off the top of the capsule, squeeze the toothpaste onto their toothbrush, and then dispose of the water-soluble and biodegradable film, eliminating yet another source of everyday plastic.
It's one thing to rewind the timeline on plastic to create a more sustainable world, but who are we creating it for? At Enactus Laurier, we believe in empowering individuals with diverse abilities. In Canada, adults with developmental disabilities have an employment rate of less than 30%, making them one of the most excluded groups in our workforce. This year, we hired 8 individuals with developmental disabilities in 13 green work placements, but Trinity speaks to the experience best.
Earthsud is my very first job, and I am so proud now that I can accomplish anything if I put my mind to it. I did it!
At Enactus Laurier, we are using entrepreneurial action to create the kind of world we want to live in. We're rewinding the timeline on plastic, creating innovations that upcycle our existing plastic waste and alternatives that prevent the creation of plastic altogether.
At Last 20, our innovative technology is giving second life to existing waste plastics, helping create a future of sustainable infrastructure. We've created 5 green internships for youth, and our pilot this summer will upcycle 817 pounds of plastic, eliminating over 1 million plastic bags from entering landfills.
At Earthsuds, we redefine clean by eliminating single-use plastics from our daily routine. This year, we focused on spreading our impact globally by scaling production and distribution. We increased our manufacturing capacity, secured nationwide distribution, increased our e-commerce sales internationally to 16 countries, and created a whole new product line of sustainable toothpaste. We also maintained our focus on inclusivity by employing 8 individuals with developmental disabilities. With this year's sales and our first production run of 150,000 tablets, we've eliminated the need for almost 25,000 plastic bottles, saving 84,000 liters of water and 819 liters of oil, and preventing 2,000 pounds of CO2 from entering our atmosphere. But this is only the start. Our vision is to enable everyone around the world to live a plastic-free life.
At Enactus Laurier, we are taking bold action to rewind the timeline on plastic. 1 road, 1 tablet, and 1 capsule at a time.
It is now time for the question and answer period. Judges, please submit your questions through the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Click on chat and use the drop down to ensure you send your questions directly to me, moderator Amy Kenyon. And while we wait for the questions to come in, students, please state your school name so we can ensure your audio is working properly. Lindsay, do you want to start us off?
Wilfrid Laurier University.
Thank you. Chirag?
Wilfrid Laurier University.
Thank you. Lauren?
Wilfrid Laurier University.
Great. And Sanjani?
Wilfrid Laurier University.
Okay, I'm just going to scroll up to see the first question here, and then we'll start the timer. Okay, first question comes from Cyrus. What are the negatives associated with leveraging plastic in asphalt or concrete instead of the current common standard composition that is used?
So at Last 20, we're actually working with an engineer that has his PhD in plastic pavement and worked on the only other pilot that was completed in Canada. And so we're doing a lot of rigorous testing to ensure that the plastic waste is suitable for the asphalt mix design. And we're really doing our due diligence in this process. So for example, the plastic, we have to ensure that there's no harmful chemicals like PVC, which are extremely terrible if they leach into the ground. So that is something that we've already done with our preliminary plastic testing. And that's all.
Great. Next question comes from Carolyn. It's not specific to one of your products, but it says the question is, what stops another company from replicating your project?
At Last 20, we have extremely strategic partners that give us our unique competitive advantage. So starting off with our engineering partner, as I mentioned, has his PhD in plastic pavement and has been helping us out vigorously in that standpoint. And then as well as our asphalt supplier, they have the proper equipment at the plant to incorporate this waste plastic into the asphalt mix. And then lastly, our plastic supplier. This was one of the biggest challenges that we had to overcome, finding a large quantity of this waste plastic that would be suitable for the pilots. And so that was something that we were able to do, and that is a proprietary source to Last 20, but we're able to get upwards of 10 to 20 tons of plastic for our upcoming pilots.
Great. Rose asks, does the asphalt use only plastic bags or all types of plastic?
We're focusing primarily on low density polyethylene, which is the thin film plastic, which is commonly found in plastic bags. So it's primarily just the low density.
Great. Kevin asks, what has your biggest challenge in EarthSuds year to date been and how have you adjusted? And a second part, how will you plan to create consumer awareness once in the major retailers?
Our biggest challenge this year for EarthSuds was definitely signing with the contract manufacturer. We didn't actually anticipate how lengthy the process would actually be to not only find a partner that's willing to scale with us, but also aligns with all of our sustainable values and could keep our supply chain as sustainable as possible. On top of this, we also had to do quality testing, which fortunately, when we got our quality testing from our manufacturer in New York, we were blown away by the product quality. Our products are much more, our tablets are much more durable now. And we even shared some of the tablets with with individuals who are familiar with EarthSuds, with our product. And they said that the product lathered better and was a lot more uniform and just gave them a better experience. So we're really excited to start this partnership.
In terms of how we will raise awareness, in the actual retailers, we have POP displays. So they'll be placed in the middle of the aisles with our product on it, and it'll educate and tell them what our brand is about and what our mission overall is.
Great. Jerry asks, why the New York manufacturer? Did you consider Canadian suppliers?
So we actually reached out to over 100 contract manufacturers across North America. And like I said before, we ultimately arrived to our partner in New York because they aligned really well with our sustainable practices. They kept our supply chain very green. They don't use any plastics in fulfillment or any single-use plastics in our supply chain. And they also are willing to scale with us. On top of this, most of our customers are located in the US. So we just thought it was overall a good partner to go forward with.
Great. Tamara asks, what does the global landscape look like? Are there other organizations producing similar products around the globe? If so, what is your plan to stay relevant in the long run?
With regards to competitors to EarthSuds, there's very few companies that actually produce a similar product to what we have. We have a couple of direct competitors, but they are located in the United Kingdom, and I believe one is located in the United States. None have really entered the Canadian market just yet. As a startup company, we are very, very adaptable and we're constantly innovating new products. Just this year, we released a brand new product in the curly hair shampoo of a new product line, and we are developing a brand new product in itself, which is Smile Tabs, which are the biodegradable toothpaste capsules. So innovation has always been a cornerstone of the EarthSuds story, and we will continue down this path to continually create new products and stay relevant in the market.
Great. Stephen asks, where did the road material innovation come from?
Funny enough, the last 20 stories started off as we wanted to upcycle plastic waste into innovative solutions. So we originally started off by selling shirts that upcycle plastic bottles into the shirts. And then we really wanted to make a larger impact, and we didn't find we were doing that with the shirts. And so as we were conducting our initial research, we saw that this type of technology has been used in India for over a decade and has been holding up really well. And their plastic waste crisis is significantly worse than ours, and it's become mandated in some areas. And so we noticed that this type of technology wasn't introduced into the Canadian market, and we saw that it would be a great opportunity to pave the way to sustainable infrastructure. Pun intended there.
Great. Jeff asks, what is the biggest barrier to growth for Last 20?
The biggest barrier to growth, as I mentioned before, was really finding a plastic supplier that was going to be able to provide large quantities of this waste plastic. However, we were able to do that. The next step for us would really be expanding our pilots and growing our customer base. Right now, we're starting off with private contractors, but our main vision is to get into the provincial road and construction highway as that market is significantly larger. So there may be some barriers when dealing with governments, but we think because it's an innovative solution, they'll be very intrigued by it.
Great. Jillian asks, did you complete consumer research to understand preferences?
For sure, with EarthSuds, we actually had a lot of pilots and testing happening before we brought our product to market. And even now, we're consistently getting feedback and requests, and that's exactly where curly hair shampoo and conditioner came from. A lot of customers wanted something that was a little bit more moisturizing for curly hair, and that's why we're always collecting that feedback and trying to improve our product line.
Great. Mark asks, what do you anticipate your contribution margin to be after cost of goods, marketing, and distribution?
Yeah, I can take this one. So our contribution margin as of right now is 32.5% for our e-commerce. When we start entering those national retailers, we do anticipate it to go down a little bit, but as we scale and as we grow and meet our targets, we'll be able to get a retail profit margin of 27% and an e-commerce profit margin of almost 50%.
Great. Bruce asks, how do you acquire the plastic that you need? Are there regulatory challenges with taking plastics from dumps or landfill sites? Can you explain how you get the plastic you need and how you're able to scale?
Yes, this is a proprietary partnership, but we are using post-industrial waste plastics, and our supplier is able to get the type of plastic that's clean enough that it can be used to create the most optimal mix. However, our main vision will be to expand and try to include other types of plastics so that we can tackle all aspects of this problem, and that's what we'll be doing through our R&D research as we grow.
Your time has expired. Please join me in congratulating the Enactus team from Wilfrid Laurier University. Judges, we now have a scheduled break. Please ensure you're back at your screens by no later than 2 p.m. when we will begin the last two presentations. Students, you may now leave the meeting. Our judges have asked their questions. For those of you watching at home, if you have questions for Wilfrid Laurier University, please submit them now using the QR code or link on the screen, and we'll ask the most popular questions at our ceremony later this afternoon. Welcome back. Please join me in welcoming the team from Lambton College. Judges, please open their report from the link in your email, which we also just shared in the chat, and scroll to their green sheet in your judge handbook. You now have 3 minutes to review the written report. Judges, please turn your attention to the screen as we play the video presentation.
People.
Planet.
Prosperity.
All three are completely linked in Project One Circle.
As the First Nations people of Canada rise again.
First Nations people were the original inhabitants of what is now Canada,
with cultures spanning thousands of years.
Predating European settlers by millennia.
First Nations people established this land.
But our more recent history has left them behind.
Through it all, the flame of First Nation cultures continued to burn bright.
And we could see it ready to roar.
So we posed 2 questions to dozens of First Nations communities.
What do you need right now?
And what do you want for your future?
With that, Project One Circle was born.
After 10 years of working in Zambia, Africa, building a scaled and sustained food security project, it was time to focus on people, planet, and prosperity closer to home.
We launched Project One Circle to drive sustainable change in communities lacking equitable, social, and economic opportunities. We have begun work in 31 First Nations across Canada.
Today we will be highlighting 3 food security projects with major commercial intent and an agri-science entrepreneurial project.
These projects have been undertaken with our partner communities Muscoday, Nistawasis, Muskeg Lake, and Little Black Bear First Nation.
Because people, planet, and prosperity are completely linked in Project One Circle, we have built 4 greenhouses across 3 First Nations in Treaty 6 territory in Saskatchewan.
In our needs assessment with our partner nations, we heard repeatedly that food security is a priority.
We needed a solution that would start producing results quickly, but that could also be a sustainable source of fresh, healthy food with the potential to develop revenue streams.
And that led to the construction of 4 greenhouses.
Developed for year-round growing, they can supply each nation with 600,000 pounds of food annually.
That's a major source of food security, with over $200,000 in yearly revenue.
Just as crucially, the greenhouses are built beside a school, allowing the students and community members to come together and learn hands-on about sustainable agriculture and participate in traditional land-based learning.
For the second component of our food security project, we took that land-based approach further and started developing 2 food forests.
A food forest is like a massive community garden, only more sustainable because it doesn't have to be replanted and requires less maintenance since it mimics a natural ecosystem.
It brings together Indigenous approaches to agriculture with innovative permaculture concepts and brings the community together, creating a fully organic and fully sustainable ecosystem.
Our food forests reflect the nation's desire to reconnect people with traditional practices around food and nutrition, culture, and agriculture,
while also increasing food security and providing a much-needed source of revenue.
It's all intertwined in our partner nations. These food forests grow roots as strong as the culture that nourishes them and reflect the resilience of the people who harvest them.
These greenhouses and food forests will nourish the body as they nourish the soul, grow a love of learning while bringing social and cultural prosperity as they bring economic prosperity.
Because people, planet, and prosperity are completely linked in Project One Circle, we are building right now 3 aquaponics facilities in 3 Treaty 6 First Nations.
Aquaponics is the combination of aquaculture, which is the growing of fish, and hydroponics, which is the growing of plants without soil.
The waste produced by fish supplies nutrients to the plants grown hydroponically. In turn, those plants purify the water.
The nutrient and oxygen-rich environment created by aquaponics grows plants 3 times as quickly and produces 8 times more food per acre compared to traditional farming.
It also uses 90% less water than traditional farming, as the water is continuously cycled through the plants and fish tank, with the only water loss stemming from evaporation.
Our 3 aquaponics facilities will provide our partner nations with an abundant source of fish protein and fresh produce.
But wait, it gets better.
And it gets bigger.
Our aquaponics facilities have been created in partnership with Wabatek BDC and are fully funded by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Northern Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative.
Training First Nation staff on the operation and maintenance of aquaponics systems has started.
Once training is completed and the nations are ready, the facilities will be expanded into large commercial operations, creating an entire new industry with our partner First Nations.
And that industry has massive opportunity.
The global demand for seafood and fish products far exceeds what can be caught in the wild.
Within the next 10 years, aquaculture output will have to double production to keep pace with demand, and the biggest opportunity is right here in North America.
We consume 12.9% of the world's aquaculture production, yet produce just 1% of it.
In dollar values, we consume over $32 billion of the world's aquaculture production and produce just over $2 billion.
The demand is here, and our First Nation partners are going to meet it.
These aquaponics facilities will safeguard the environment as they safeguard the nation's futures.
They will create fresh, healthy food as they create jobs, and they will build an industry as they build hope.
Our leadership have fantastic vision for the future prosperity of their communities. However, a lot of times the day-to-day issues that come up when you're managing a community can be really overwhelming. And when you have so many pressing issues today, it's hard to focus on that long-term vision for the future. For me, that's really been the secret sauce of this Enactus relationship. They've been able to add a level of expertise and project planning to our community projects, and they're going to help us achieve that long-term vision of prosperity. The great thing is that the students understand that prosperity isn't always about money. It's not bags of money that our communities need. The projects that we're building reconnect youth with the land, reconnect youth with traditional knowledge by engaging with elders. And most importantly, it creates sparks of interest in future careers that will allow the youth to utilize their most important resources, the land and each other.
Because people, planet, and prosperity are completely linked in Project One Circle, Muscogee, Muskeg and Mistawasis First Nations have sustainable food security solutions.
That's over 7,000 people who know that regardless of global pandemics and supply chain issues, they will have access to fresh, healthy food grown by communities themselves using a combination of modern agriculture and traditional Indigenous approaches to food production.
Over the next 12 months, the greenhouses, aquaponics, and food forests will supply these three nations with over 725,000 pounds of food worth over $835,000.
Even more than that, Project One Circle gives these nations communal goals to work towards and new education and training opportunities, including opportunities that elevate Indigenous culture and learning.
It's all intertwined in our partner nations.
They've inspired us as they've inspired each other.
Because people, planet, and prosperity are completely linked in Project One Circle, the final project we would like to highlight is the building of a vermicompost business in Little Black Bear First Nation in Treaty 4 territory.
Better Earthworms produces a general-purpose, high-quality organic plant fertilizer. This plant fertilizer, known as vermicompost, is made from food waste.
Food waste is fed into a flow-through system that hosts hundreds of thousands of worms.
The worms eat the food waste and create an end product that can be sold as an organic soil fertilizer, one that's superior to man-made chemical fertilizers.
What kind of end product do the worms create?
Worm casting or worm manure?
You mean worm poop?
Yes, I mean worm poop.
Better Earthworms uses traditional land-based values used to produce a green, renewable, all-natural, organic product.
It's a product for the land, from the land, produced by the people of the land.
This provides Better Earthworms with a significant competitive advantage in a $77 million market, poised to more than double by 2026.
And with a home base in Saskatchewan, Better Earthworms has easy access to the highest number of organic farmers in Canada.
Research shows that over 20% of the food produced in Canada annually becomes avoidable food loss, and that is 11 million tons.
Better Earthworms provides an organic waste collection service to local food production and food service industries, diverting food waste from the landfill and converting it to the highest quality soil amendment.
Our vermicompost fertilizer is already being sold directly to consumers, and soon 4 garden centers in Regina will be selling it.
We are on target to generate over $70,000 in revenue this year, creating 3 new jobs while diverting 52,000 pounds of food waste from landfills.
A project is also underway with our college's Department of Research and Innovation to study the effect of food supply on the chemical composition of the vermicompost.
This project will allow Better Earthworms to control the nutritional output of their vermicompost, creating a highly specialized product.
You mean specialized worm poop?
Yes, I mean specialized worm poop.
What came from the earth is returned to it, growing healthy, organic food as it grows a business.
Using innovation to enhance Indigenous traditions while respecting the environment.
The earth gives us everything we need to sustain ourselves. But in nature, nothing goes to waste. We take food scraps that would otherwise end up in the landfill and feed it to our earthworms, creating a beautiful, rich compost.
As an Indigenous-owned company, we think it's crucially important that we are innovative and that we're leaders when it comes to caring for the environment. At Better Earthworms, our goal is to reduce as much waste as possible so that we can give it back to the land.
With Project One Circle, we are helping our partner nations gain food security by returning to land-based learning and the agricultural practices at which they once thrived before laws in the 1880s extinguished their farming.
That's how we're helping people.
We're also focusing on organic growing, increasing crop output while decreasing our carbon footprint, minimizing water usage, reducing food waste going to landfills, and reducing how much food needs to be brought into the nations while decreasing fossil fuel usage.
That's how we are impacting the planet.
And not only are we creating revenue streams, new businesses, and an entire industry in our partner nations, but we're helping to bring these communities together around common goals
renewing their love of agriculture and land-based education while shining a light on the importance of Indigenous culture and traditions.
That's our idea of prosperity.
So the partnership with the Enactus group has provided for our communities an understanding of potential projects that they could be bringing to their community members, to the children, as well as providing for potential economic sustainability, building capacities for future generations to take the stronghold. And for us, that's an exciting venture. I think this is something that can absolutely grow the potential of our youth and potential of the success of our children.
We can't change the past and what has happened to First Nations in Canada, but through reconciliation built on understanding, trust, and commitment, this project and our team can be a small part of changing the future.
We are Enactus Lambton.
It is now time for the question and answer period. Judges, please submit your questions through the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Click on chat and use the drop-down to ensure you send your questions directly to me, moderator Amy Kenyon. And while we wait for the questions to come in, students, please state your school name so we can ensure your audio is working properly. Megan? Oh, I can't hear you. Do you want to try that again? Check your mute. Can't hear you there. I'll try the other two first. Andrea?
Andrea from Lambton College.
Thank you. Brian?
Brian from Lambton College.
Great. Megan, you want to try again? No, I have no audio. Give me 1 second. I'll see if we can get that working on the tech side. Megan, you want to try one more time? No. Stand by. Let's try one more time there, Megan. I think our production team is messaging you directly. No. I think we are going to have to go ahead, so I'm going to leave it to my production guy to figure that out with you while we start the questions. So the first question comes from Ian. Just going to scroll back up here. Where did the funds come from to allow you to invest $580,000 in your projects over the past year?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we have several different sources of funding for our project. A large piece of that funding was provided to us by NICFI, which it stands for the Northern Integrated Commercials Fisheries Initiative, as well as DFO, which is the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, in combination with Wabatech Business Development Corporation. So they contributed around $480,000 to the aquaponics project. And so those three aquaponics facilities are completely funded by those three organizations. And so that does make up the majority of that $580,000 invested. However, our team has been working very, very hard at securing additional partnerships and grants over the past year. And we have been successful in securing a grant from the Indigenous Peoples Resilience Fund for approximately $30,000. Through some partnerships that we have with financial institutions. We haven't invested all of this into our projects, but we did secure a partnership worth $850,000 that's funding our team personally for the next 3 years. And through that partnership, we were able to supply the nations with about $20,000 in funding to go into their projects. And then there's also been a few other small grants here and there, but that's the majority of that makeup of investments.
Great. Supriya asks, how has the project team contemplated sharing this approach to other Indigenous communities in other parts of the world?
That's a really great question. And we have actually had conversations with other organizations in specific, they're in the States, that have asked us to come and work with Indigenous communities in other parts of North America. However, there are over 600 First Nations and Indigenous communities in Canada. And so we're currently working and begin working with around 30 of them. And so we're really trying to keep our focus in Canada at the moment because there's so much work to be done here and so much more expansion that is needed. But after we do expand into more and more First Nations communities in Canada, we would definitely be open to additional partnerships and working with additional Indigenous communities, not only in North America, but also across the globe.
Great. And a follow-up question from Ian, how do you select the First Nations communities that you work with here?
So that is always an interesting question to answer because it's kind of a long one. So bear with me as I explain how we begin working with First Nations communities. But I'll take you back to a few years ago where it's really where our project began. And our school in Sarnia, Ontario, Lambton College, is surrounded by many, many First Nations. And within an hour's drive, you can probably go to around 10 to 15 First Nations. And so our college has many students from these communities that come to our school, and some of them have been Enactus students in the past. And so working with our other project in Zambia, where we helped to develop a middle class and a food security project similar to the one in First Nations communities. But in Zambia, we had these Indigenous students come to us and say, we love what you're doing, and we would love you to help our communities right here in our backyard because there's so many of us that need that help. And so we said, yes, of course, we would love to come into your communities. We'd love to take a look and see how we can expand into these communities. But that had to wait until after we were done our project in Zambia. And so after closing that 10-year project in Zambia, we then started our journey in First Nations communities in Canada. And so originally we started in these local First Nations communities around our college, but Indigenous communities are very, very well connected. And so we started getting calls from all across Canada for us to come and work with them in their communities. And a big piece of, so I guess that's my long way of saying that we don't choose the First Nations communities, but they choose us. But also another reason that we chose Indigenous communities in the first place is because of how well they fit into people, planet, and prosperity. Indigenous communities, Indigenous people are the makeup of people, planet, and prosperity. They completely embody those three things. And you cannot take one piece out of the other. They're just so completely intertwined, as you heard us say many times in our presentation. But so our project is not only helping people to secure food security for them, it's not only helping the planet in several different ways, but it's also helping them prosper. And by prospering their people, having community prosperity instead of just economic prosperity, we're also helping their planet prosper, our planet prosper, and their people prosper.
Great. The next question comes from Jeff. What is the biggest challenge to the rapid expansion of the aquaponics business?
Oh, the biggest challenge I would say is that there are just so many different learning curves when it comes to the aquaponics industry. So as I mentioned, we are partnered with NICFI, the DFO, as well as Wabatech BDC. And so we're currently working with just training size facilities. And these training size facilities are biosecure, and the intention of having them as training size is so that way we are able to build that capacity and that understanding before we're able to expand into a commercial sized industry. And so we're really just trying to capture all of that knowledge before we go into a larger scale. So that way, when we are ready to expand, we do it extremely well and there aren't any major hiccups along the way.
Andrea, I just want to jump in here and I want to make sure you guys can hear me. Yes. Another thing I want to add to this is that it is hard to find community champions sometimes. So our team always makes sure that we find them, but that is a bit of a challenge that we've noticed over the last year.
Great. David asks, can this be done 365 days a year? We have a short growing season in Canada. How do you get around this?
So that's a great point, and especially working in certain areas of Canada, it is very, very cold, as I'm sure we all know. But to get around this, we did build those 4 greenhouses, and so currently there are 3-season greenhouses, but with a little bit of supplemental heat, it's not very difficult to make it into a 4-season greenhouse. And all of these aquaponics facilities are located in the greenhouse to ensure proper temperature throughout the full year, and it is monitored very closely with just temperature.
Just adding on to that, we also did just sign a partnership with Indigenous Clean Energy to put solar panels on these greenhouses, along with Light Up the World.
Great. Dave Henderson asks, can you summarize the results that are linked only to this year for One Circle?
Yes, another lengthy answer, so I apologize in advance. So just to give you all a bit of an idea, around this time last year, we were working with only 3 First Nations. And since then, we've begun working with 31 First Nations. And so all of the work actually that was presented on happened this year. So around this time last year, we were in conversations with those 3 nations, and we listened to them explain to us that they needed to establish food security. They needed economic development. They needed—
Your time has expired. Please join me in congratulating the Enactus team from Lambton College. Judges, we have a couple of minutes as we bring in the next team. Please use this time to complete your green sheets and we'll get started momentarily. Students, you may now leave your meeting. Our judges have asked their questions. For those of you watching on the live stream, if you have a question for Lambton College, please submit them using the QR code or link on the screen, and we'll ask the most popular questions at our ceremony later this afternoon. And now for our final team of the day, please join me in welcoming the team from Queen's University. Judges, please open their report from the link in your email, which we also just shared in the chat, and scroll to their green sheet in your judge handbook. You now have 3 minutes to review their written report. Judges, please turn your attention to the screen as we play the video presentation.
Where are the big environment groups? They are deliberately not engaging with the most important issue of all.
But this romantic vision that I always had of the ocean completely changed.
Mankind is not able to live on this planet with the Dead Sea.
I'm sure many of you have seen this documentary, but for those who haven't, let me provide a synopsis. Seaspiracy sheds light on the perils our oceans now face, how our actions are wreaking havoc on these delicate ecosystems. And the ultimate culprit is humanity's desire to eat fish. This film illuminated everything that is wrong with the global food system. That the food we are eating is putting harmful toxins into the air we breathe and the water we drink. The nets we use to catch this food are breaking apart in the middle of the Pacific in such abundance that marine animals are eating plastic instead of natural food. Plain and simple, if we change the way we eat, we can solve the climate crisis and ensure all of humanity has ample food at all times. Don't believe me? Here are the facts. The agriculture industry contributes 26% to global greenhouse gas emissions. Over 80% of the Amazon rainforest deforestation has been the result of cattle production. 50,000 acres of forest are cut down per day for agriculture. Half of the world's arable land and 70% of freshwater withdrawals are used for food production. In Canada, 1 in 8 households are food insecure. And fish consumption contributes to almost 50% of the plastic pollution in the oceans. And most alarmingly, if we don't change the way we eat, the world's oceans could be empty by 2050. We cannot continue on this path and expect that things will simply get better. And change is hard to promote, but it's even harder to implement. And yet here we are, a group of students with ambitions to change the way we eat and change the world forever. I'm not here to discuss how much we're messing up. Besides, no one likes an unhappy ending, especially one that ends with humanity eating Soylent Green due to ocean acidification, infertile croplands, and overpopulation. However, what if Soylent Green was the answer? And what if we've just been thinking about food completely wrong? We've got a solution. One that involves fighting climate change, fighting malnutrition, and global food inequity while appeasing the palates of even the most seasoned food critics. What is the solution? It's food made with algae. My name's Devin, and this is my co-founder, Alessandra.
Hi, I'm Alessandra.
We're co-founders of Algae, the first company in Canada creating great tasting, nutritious, and sustainable food products from algae. And this is the Enactus Queens team that has helped us turn this vision into a reality.
At Enactus Queens,
we believe impossible problems
require micro solutions.
Like algae.
In mid-2019, Alessandra and I came across an article in Forbes that stated that algae was the food of the future. This was unbelievable, mostly because we'd never heard of this stuff, and we were a little bit skeptical, because it seems every week an article comes out that hails a new food as the savior of humanity, usually from some remote corner of the world. But I'm happy to say that our skepticism about algae was soon put to rest. Algae, as we soon discovered, could be up to 70% protein by weight, was filled with omega-3 fatty acids, provided 8% of your daily iron per teaspoon, required no arable land to grow, had a 2-to-1 carbon capture ratio, allowed for up to 95% of the water used to be recycled, and could go from seed to plate in 8 hours flat. Seriously, people, algae-based foods can address SDG 2, 0 hunger, 12, responsible consumption and production, 13, climate action, 14, life below water, and 15, life on land. With a list of credentials like that, we should be putting all of our resources towards this thing. There's one major problem: the taste. From the start, we've known that making algae taste great is the key to using this as a tool in the fight against climate change. So, we did what any good entrepreneurial individuals would do, and we decided to start with design thinking. We started by making everything and anything using algae. Things like ramen noodles, pasta products, tortilla chips, dips, sauces, crackers, you name it, and testing them at farmers markets in Kingston. What we found is that people loved the concept, but they weren't quite ready to commit to a full-on algae-based meal. What we did find out, however, was that people were interested in smaller products, more bite-sized, things like an energy bar. So we got back into the kitchen and we built an energy bar using spirulina algae. We tested over 50 versions of this early bar on more than 2,000 different people at school and community events, and at pitch competitions in Toronto, Seattle, and Copenhagen. People loved these bars, which gave us the confidence to become full-on algae-based connoisseurs, but part-time students. In April of 2020, we decided to launch an MVP version of the bar to validate whether consumers would purchase the product. We called this MVP version of the bar the Impact Bar, and people loved it. The unprocessed plant-based energy bar has 12 grams of protein, 30% of your daily iron, and fewer than 7 whole ingredients. And since April of 2020, we've sold over 4,000 versions of this MVP Impact Bar, bringing in over $15,000 in revenue. In the past year, we were a member of League of Innovators Labs Batch 5, received a Scotiabank Climate Action Project Accelerator grant, were one of only a handful of companies selected for the Platform Calgary Agri-Yield Accelerator Program, were an Enactus Student Entrepreneur finalist, won the McGill Dobson Cup Environmental Enterprise Track and received a $20,000 grant, and have been admitted into the York University Y-Space Food Accelerator Program for 2021. We also spent hours over the last year speaking at online events for youth, demonstrating that entrepreneurship is a viable career path. We've been busy, but would not have been able to do so without a strong team at Enactus Queens and our great team of advisors and mentors. This past year has been great. We've demonstrated that a couple of Queens students with little knowledge of food can develop, test, produce, and sell a unique and innovative food product. But here's the thing, $15,000 in revenue in a year won't change the world, and it surely won't fund our livelihoods. Since August of 2020, we've been developing and testing 3 new flavors of the Impact Bar, all with fully recyclable packaging and all catered to our beachhead market of endurance athletes. Success moving forward will be defined by our ability to reach as many new consumers as possible and demonstrate that algae-based foods have a place in our diets. At the end of May, we will be releasing the Impact Bar in 2 flavors to retail stores in Western Canada. we have already secured major accounts with some of Canada's largest online and brick-and-mortar grocers. As a result, we are expected to be in 25 stores in central Alberta in June. By the end of July, we expect to have grown to a total of 75 store accounts, and in August we will be launching a third flavor of the Impact Bar, which will help us hit 100 store accounts by the end of summer. In addition to retail accounts, we will be pushing our e-commerce store where Canadians from coast to coast can purchase the Impact Bar. In September, we will be expanding into Eastern BC and expect to be in Vancouver retail stores by January 2022. We expect to expand through Ontario and Quebec in the spring of 2022, and in total, by this point next year, we have the ambitious goal of securing 400 store accounts, which can include grocery stores, gyms, fitness studios, and sporting goods stores. Of course, we can't meet this growth and demand all on our own, so starting in September 2021, we will be working with distributors to ensure our growth targets are met. To support this growth, we've moved into a new facility that will allow us an output of 8,000 bars per day. We will be hiring 2 to 3 production assistants to help us produce the Impact Bars, and in addition, to support our ambitious growth plans, we have hired a full-time summer marketing intern who began working with us on May 3rd. Now let's take a look at the margins. The Impact Bars have a margin of 55%. With our expected distribution scale-up, we expect to reach $15,000 in revenue by July 2021. Our projected revenue for the next 12 months is $1 million, and projected revenue for the next 24 months is $3.2 million. To support these revenue projections, we will be spending all summer attending and sponsoring events across Western Canada, such as triathlon and bike races, where those within our target market can test out the Impact Bar. Now, due to COVID, we cannot sample in stores. However, these in-person events will allow us to begin getting the product into the hands of the right people. Now, I bet you're all wondering how a group of Enactus Queens students is going to tackle the climate problem using well-branded, delicious energy bars. Well, don't worry. We're getting to that. Algae has the potential to address SDGs 2, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And here's how. For SDG 2, algae is the most cost-effective protein option in existence. At under 2 cents per gram of protein, an average Canadian meets their daily protein requirements for just $1.15. This is absolutely huge, especially compared to beef, which costs 4 cents per gram of protein, and chicken, which costs 3 cents per gram of protein. And algae has so many additional nutritional benefits beyond simply the protein. SDG 12. The more people that consume algae-based products, the fewer unsustainable foods like meat and seafood are consumed. In the past year alone, we have indirectly influenced more than 10,000 people on the benefits of sustainable consumption through algae. Now for SDG 13, 14, and 15. For SDG 13, because algae has a 2-to-1 carbon capture ratio, and it is actively contributing to the removal of carbon from the atmosphere. For us, since April of 2020, the sale of our products has sequestered 82 kilograms of carbon dioxide. For SDG 14, because algae does not require arable land, no forests need to be torn down to support it. And for SDG 15, because algae has the same nutritional properties as seafood, fewer people need to consume seafood to sustain their omega-3 requirement. At Algae, we don't just see ourselves as a bar company. We see ourselves as a guide in transitioning the world to a more sustainable and nutritious way of eating. Our long-term ambitions include creating a wide array of algae-based food products that cater to a broader audience and make it easier for consumers to eat sustainably. On behalf of the Algae and Enactus Queens team, I am asking you to choose foods with an impact.
It is now time for the question and answer period. Judges, please submit your questions through the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Click on chat and use the drop-down to ensure you send your questions directly to me, moderator Amy Kenyon. And while we wait for the questions to start coming, students, if you could state your school name so that we can ensure your audio is working properly. I'll start with Maureen.
Queen's University.
Thank you. Sabrina.
Queen's University.
Thank you. And Devon.
Queen's University.
Great, thank you. And the first question comes from Cyrus. It appears that the bars are wrapped in plastic. Have you explored any more sustainable ways to package them to have a bigger positive impact on the environment? Or are they already packaged in something more sustainable that you can speak to?
Absolutely. So
we just couldn't sustain the margins. We were looking into using compostable packaging. However, per bar, it comes out to $1 a unit, which is unsustainable from a business standpoint. Additionally, compostable packaging only can be composted in industrial facilities. The likelihood of that happening is pretty small. So for right now, we're just using basic recyclable packaging, which meets our business needs.
Great. Next question comes from Todd. Which part of the value chain do you participate in? Do you grow the algae?
We are not experts in growing the algae ourselves. We're becoming experts in putting algae into food. Long term, we do see ourselves becoming algae producers if it fits within our business model. But for now, we're just a producer.
Great. Matthew asks, or he says, that this feels like a product that you'll need to sample and understand its mission before you consider buying. How will you do this at scale to go from $15,000 to $1 million in revenue in 1 year?
So ensuring that an effective number of people try the product is integral in long-term success. We have big ambitions to sponsor and go to multiple events, COVID dependent, throughout the summer and into the fall throughout Western Canada to ensure that we get enough people within our target market trying the product. And the product tastes great. So once people try it, people are hooked. It's just getting over that first education hurdle.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to Devin's answer, a big part of getting people to try the product is really our creative marketing strategies and ambassador program. So that kind of really lets customers take that initial leap into tasting it. And like Devin said, everyone really likes it.
Great. Tamara asks, how do the impact bars compare to other similar products like cricket bars in terms of desirability as well as return on investment?
So algae is the most cost-effective protein source on the planet to produce. Right now, there's a little bit of a premium associated with it because it is such a niche product. Same thing with crickets, but both are growing to become more affordable. Per unit, there's nothing on the planet that compares to how much nutrition we can provide. Additionally, we've done enough customer discovery, to understand that people would rather eat something that has algae in it than something that has crickets in it. So on a comparison basis, they're more likely to consume what we have to offer.
Great. Stephen asks, did you try to mix algae as an ingredient into other foods to displace some of those ingredients but preserve the taste?
Absolutely. So we actually started out with ramen noodles, and that was kind of our most successful product. Just the natural umami flavor of ramen noodles was like the perfect blend. The products were delicious, but we couldn't effectively scale it up. But long term, we do have ambitions to create a wide array of food products, all centered around spirulina algae or other forms of algae, such as ramen noodles, alternative seafood products, etc.
Great. Todd asked, who do you compete with in terms of alternatives to your product? And do you see them trying to copy you if they feel they will lose market share?
So right now we're competing in the very oversaturated bar market. We do have one direct competitor in terms of algae bars. However, they haven't had product. They're called non-foods. They're based out of the States. They haven't had product available for the last 12 months. We do think that we do foresee companies copying us. However, we've gone through over 100 iterations at this point of the impact bars, and we have a pretty strong moat between us and copycats coming into the market. Additionally, spirulina or other forms of algae are really, really difficult to work with. So we've got definitely an edge, which is why we're trying to operate very fast and agile right now so we can establish ourselves as a market leader.
Great. David asks, how does the cost of harvesting algae factor into the business model, and does harvesting wide-scale algae impact the natural ecosystem?
Harvesting algae on a large scale won't, because it doesn't need arable land to grow. It doesn't need cropland. You don't need to tear down forests to grow algae. You can grow it in closed environments and buildings. You can grow it out in the desert. Our stuff is actually grown out in the desert, and not Canadian desert, the American deserts. And we also have secured a partnership with a distributor and a producer that's based in the States. And we've secured a cost that will allow us to ensure margins are continued to be met throughout the next foreseeable future.
Good segue into the next question from Mark. You mentioned a 55% margin. He's assuming that that is net revenue. What are your margins after marketing and distribution?
So right now we're not working with any distributors. We're just distributing right on our own. We haven't factored that in yet. And marketing right now, we're relying predominantly on homegrown marketing. I have a background in photo and video. We hired a marketing intern. So the margins that were displayed on the screen were produced prior to us actually factoring in all of these additional things. However, as previously said, these margins will decrease, but they also will decrease as a result of economies of scale. That they'll balance out because of economies of scale in production, but also will move around based off of distribution costs, store listing fees, marketing expenditures, etc.
Okay. Barry asks, how did you determine the retail price point, and how does that compete with other bars in the segment?
We determined the retail price point by looking at the bar market as a whole on the grocery store shelf, looked at the premium products, looked at the value discount products, and put in a product that would allow us to offer stores a 30% margin while maintaining a solid 50 to 55% margin on our end, while also ensuring that the product is not too expensive for the end consumer.
Okay. Michelle asks, in your written presentation, you talk about pivoting past entrepreneurship. What do you mean by this concept?
Pivoting past entrepreneurship.
In your written report?
In the written report.
Yeah, I can take that. So pivoting past entrepreneurship was an event that we actually held at Queen's. Part of our kind of efforts with Enactus are to kind of spread the spirit of sustainable entrepreneurship around campus. So that was just kind of an event, kind of letting students know how they can move past what they've learned in Enactus so far and just kind of teach them more about what they can do with their knowledge.
Great. Todd asks, do you see opportunities in other products? If so, what would be the next natural step?
Absolutely. So the next natural step for us just aligns with our target market, which is endurance athletes, is to come out with bites. However, our two most ambitious products, no one signed an NDA, but we'll just throw it out there anyways. But our most ambitious products are twofold. One, algae-based milk, which sounds interesting, but it's possible, and it could be the first carbon negative milk product in the world. And two would be an alternative fish product. The natural flavors associated with algae make it perfect, and the omegas, iron, proteins, etc., associated with algae, would make it the perfect alternative for a natural, whole, raw alternative fish product.
Great. Bruce asks, what is Bino Books also in your annual report?
Bino Books is another business venture.
Your time has expired. Please join me in congratulating the Enactus team from Queen's University. That was our final presentations. Judges, stand by for final instructions. And for those watching our live stream, if you have questions for Queen's University, please submit them using the QR code or link on the screen. And we'll ask the most popular questions at our ceremony, which will begin right here in just a few minutes.